think the conflict continued until Tony Blair eventually found some sort of broad way forward out of this. My worry is this: why won't Israel take up the reality that both the Palestinians that were living there before they were expelled and Jews have a right to live side by side with that wall coming down, with the creation of at least one economic unit, if not one state? The days when we argued for a secular state there, in which Arab and Jew could live together, have gone.
Let me explain. Israel is already a multinational secular state in which Arabs, of which a poll, I think it was 2 years ago in Haaretz, which is probably would be a newspaper you would read if you live in Israel, Ken, because it's very left-wing, actually stated that 77% of Israeli Arabs said that if they had the chance to go somewhere else, they wouldn't, because they appreciate, although there may be problems as a minority, as there are problems in minorities here in America and other Western countries, they would not want to go anywhere. Okay, Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East. You don't all you want to mention is the problems it has with society. I don't mention the why don't we talk about the ethnic cleansing of Jews out of Arab countries, shall we, Ken?
I think this
why don't we talk about that?
I would condemn that.
Oh, but you don't want to talk about that.
Well, no,
what is your agenda in this?
But the reality is that was an inevitable consequence of the ethnic cleansing that Israelis did to their Arab citizens. There's bound to be a backlash, Victor.
This idea of a democracy, I mean, it's on a superficial level, you're right, and I agree with most of what you said, but also there are laws in Israel that specifically state that you can only have a political party if it accepts Israel as a Jewish and democratic state. So it already brings in the idea of a Jewish state in there. So it's not. And also, of course, the historical legacy that there were Palestinians living on the land first, and that, yes, it's a democracy now, but if the Palestinians had still been living there and were the majority.
Where do you say that Palestinians were living on the land first? The Jews have been there since day dot for thousands of years. The Jews had a country. They had in greater. They had a united Israel under King David, under King Solomon, and you're saying the indigenous population of the Palestinians. It's a joke. It's a joke.
Let me condemn the ethnic cleansing of Jews from that land by the ancient empire
First
of Rome.
I've heard you say it. Great.
Wrong.
Great.
2,000 years ago. But you can't seriously, you're not about to tell me this was a people without a land for a land without people.
This is
Palestinians were there. They were driven out.
They were not driven out.
Yes, they were.
If they were driven out, why are there 1.5 million Arabs in Israel? Why are there 1.5 million Arabs in Israel?
Because
who are very happy to live in Israel. They're very happy to live in Israel. 1.5 million Arabs in Israel who live under democracy. They have greater liberties than the rest of the Arabs in the Middle East.
Why not allow the others, the descendants of the others who were driven out, to be able to come back and live in the land where their ancestors come from?
So why? How many other expulsions or situations where populations have had to leave? Are the Jews allowed back into the Arab countries? Have they ever?
I would make that case.
Have they ever once?
I make that case.
Have they ever? You made that case. Very good, Ken. That's the first time I've heard you say it. Maybe we can extend that and go deeper and maybe drag some sort of fairness out of you.
It's not the problem here that when Zionism was conceived of back in 1880s, the world was one that accepted racial division. British people assumed they were racially superior to blacks, that they were racially superior to the Chinese. The Germans talked about anyone of German blood, even if it had been 1,000 years since they left, able to come back. The world, broadly accepted this racism at all levels. And that was the origin of Zionism, the idea, well, every other group's racially selective, we will do it. We see
That's
that
not the
today.
object of Zionism, Ken, you're wrong.
We see that today in this ridiculous situation that whereas Christianity and Islam massively goes out there to convert people to its faith, it's very difficult to convert into Judaism. And we've got this ridiculous situation where our Supreme Court is deciding on the school admissions policies for Jewish schools. And so I think there is this real problem. There's a sort of racial exclusiveness has its origins in that dreadful time, 1880s, when all nations
Why don't we
suffered
talk about
from it.
racial exclusivity in places like Saudi Arabia, Ken? Why don't we talk about racial exclusivity in Iran?
What is your fear of having a secular state in which the refugees can return? And, it was inconceivable.
What does refugee mean?
It's anyone whose ancestors were driven out in 1948 or subsequently.
That's what you call a refugee. Well, there's all sorts of cloudiness with regard to the term refugee. Supposedly, there's 5 million refugees living outside of Israel.
So you have an Israel.
So what you're saying is
Jewish
5 million refugees, because as you know about the Geneva Initiative, where they want to recognise Israel if Israel cedes back to the 67 lines, but all the refugees come into Israel. Plus, we've got an exclusively Palestinian Arab West Bank and Gaza. Is that what you call? Is that what you call us fair? Is it?
You have
one Jewish state in the world, 50-odd Muslim states. Why cannot there be a Jewish state?
Racially exclusive states.
So does the Palestinians.
The Likud party platform says that they expressly, it's on the platform, rejects the idea of a Palestinian state.
Absolutely. Bibi Netanyahu has said he will make any painful concessions in order to see the two-state solution come to fruition. He specifically recently said that we are not going to build any more settlements, and the Palestinians do not want peace with Israel. The Palestinians have had many opportunities of a two-state solution. Bear in mind, we've already got Jordan, which is 80% of Palestine, of which no Jews are allowed to go there. How about that for racism, Ken? No Jews allowed in there. We never hear you. We never hear you say it.
Why can't Palestinians live in Palestine?
Well, why can't I go and live in America?
Well, you most probably can.
Well, I think you'll find that they're very, very difficult for me to get citizenship to America. So each country has its own rights as to who it does and does not let into their country to live.
When Jews left Russia, finally after the old communists let them go, most of the Russian Jews wanted to go to America. They were forced to actually go to Israel because that was part of the deal done to defend Zionist interests, that we'll create as many Jews in one area as possible.
Ken?
Why didn't Israel allow the Russian Jews who wished to emigrate from Russia and wanted to go to America, why do they insist they have to go to Israel?
This is not a fact. This is absolute propaganda. The fact of the matter is, Ken, I'm sitting here on this show in an Iranian TV station with the microscope all on Israel, the only democratic democracy in the Middle East, with democracy for Muslims, Christians and whoever. And yet you, nor yourself, Victor, want to talk about the Arab countries. None of the Israel bashers like yourself, Ken, ever want to talk about the Arab countries who have... I mean, let's be honest, when you were mayor of London, you welcomed with open arms one of the most racist, disgusting human beings, Yusuf Karadari, who's openly, explicitly the killing of gays, the killing of pregnant Israeli women, and yet you have the cheek to go and criticise Israel on a regular basis for being discriminatory.
I embrace Karadari because I heard him in my presence argue that there shouldn't be punitive measures against homosexuals. Well, I believe what a man tells me to my face rather than what I read on Mossad-backed websites.
But Mossad's website, I see. So you're saying the fact that 23 Muslim states in the UN actually signed a declaration against this man for his actions. Well, but of course, a Mossad plot, that is a lie, that is propaganda, of which you are always party to.
He represents a progressive strand of Islam, which is why many of the existing Arab states hate him. Anyhow, I suspect we're not going to resolve this in the next 10 seconds.
The man is well known for discrimination. You welcomed him.
I mean, I welcomed him because I heard him say what he said with his own mouth in my presence, that he is not anti-homosexual, he does not support the persecution of Jews or Christians,
so would you believe
but he defends the right of Palestinians to fight for their homeland. But unfortunately, we have to bring this discussion to a close. I suspect it will continue for a very long time to come. I think this book is a powerful case. I hope it might be turned into a popular shortened version because it is basically a PhD thesis. I'd like to thank both my guests, Victor and Keith, for coming and having a valuable discussion, even though we haven't come to a unanimity in our point of view. If you've got an opinion on what's been said here today, or you've a particular book you'd like to draw to attention, then please email us at epilogue@presstv.co.uk. And until next time, thank you for watching.